So now let me just jump to the next new topic. So as I told,
Yeah,
we are going to read some data from the Excel sheet. So the reason is like in the real time world, so we always maintain the test data in various way till now. So what we have done in the sense, like we have hard coded the data. So hard coded data in the sense, like we have straight away we have used the respective data inside the double quotes, or in sometimes like what we have done, so we have injected the data, we have read the data from the feature file and we have injected the data into in the send keys. So this is the feature of the Cucumber framework. So based upon our need, so we can parameterize the test data, so with the help of the double quotes, or we can parameterize the multiple set of test data with the help of the examples keyword, under which like we can create the data table. And in other way, like whenever we have some sensitive data, or even if you have a multiple test data, so we can store all the test data in the Excel sheet. Okay, so we can read the Excel sheet, and from the Excel sheet, so we can inject the value inside the send keys. So now here, right, so just we have discussed one basic scenario, so login scenario, and we are going to enter the username and password. And how we have entered the username and password in the sense, so simply we have hard coded the value. So now instead of hard coding the value, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to place all my credential in the Excel sheet, and I'm going to read the Excel sheet. So now let me just open one Excel sheet. So whenever like you are opening the Excel sheet, so try to understand the flow. So initially, whenever you opening the new Excel sheet, the first and foremost thing which we are doing is like we are creating the workbook. Okay, so like we are creating the workbook. So that is the first step. So we are creating the workbook. So now let me just click on the blank workbook. So after creating the workbook, so in the Excel sheet, we are having some sheet. So either we can have a single sheet, or we can have a multiple sheet. So like if we have the multiple sheet like sheet 1 or sheet 2, or else like you can rename the sheet. Let it be of an login. Okay. So here we are having n number of sheet, and the user can place the test data in any of the sheet. So we need to specify the sheet. So after opening the workbook, so we need to specify the sheet which we need to refer. And how we can specify the sheet in the sense, by providing the sheet name. So sheet name is nothing but, so which we have mentioned, so like the login sheet, or the sheet 2, or sheet 3, this is we call it as an sheet name. So now after accessing the like specific sheet, so the value will be stored in any of the cell. So let's say here I have stored the username called as an sample, and the password called as an ABC. Okay, so and where I have stored the test data in the sense, in a specific cell. So we need to read the value from the specific cell. So like the specific cell in a sense, like it is like A1 cell, and this ABC password is present in the A2 cell, and we need to read the cell value. And how we are going to read the cell value in the sense, like by passing the intets. So intets in the sense, like we are going to pass the row intets, and then like we are going to pass the column intets. So like let's say like if you are aware of the matrix, like you all know, like in the Excel sheet it always start with the zeroth row, and we call it as a zeroth column. So what is the index value of this A1 in the sense, it is present in the zeroth row and the zeroth column. So whereas what is the index value of the B1 in the sense, it is present in the zeroth row and the first column. So whereas like if I say this A2, so A2 is present in the first row and the zeroth column. In similar way, like B2 is present in the first row and first column. So specifically like how we write the matrix. So in similar way, like we need to inject the corresponding like the row index and the corresponding column index, and based upon the row and column index we are going to retrieve the cell value. So let me just place the test data called as an sample, and let me have the password as ABC. So now we have created the data sheet. So now let me just store this sheet in my local. Okay, so let me just browse somewhere else, and let me just store in the download. Okay, so sample test data sheet. Okay, so now I have saved this sheet. So where this test data sheet is present, in the sense it is present in my local, in my system, but where we need to place this test data, in the sense inside the project. And we can use the test data in any of the scenario, so which is nothing but it is going to act as kind of an reusable file. So whenever we are going to use something as a reusable file, so we should place under the source main, and that is not a coding. So for sure the Excel is going to act as a supportive file. If it is of an supportive file, so we should place it under the resources. So now inside which I'm adding one more new package. So let it be of an data. Okay, so here I'm going to maintain all the test data. Now I'm just going to copy the Excel sheet, and I'm going to paste the Excel sheet. I'm just doing the Control C, and here I'm clicking on the data package, and I'm right clicking and I'm clicking on the paste. So now what happened? The sheet will be copied inside our project. Okay, now let me just close the sheet, and if I expand this data, so you could see this is the sheet which we have created, sample test data sheet. And whenever like you are using the Excel, so you should always note the extension. So the extension of my Excel sheet is like Excel assets. Okay, so we should know, take care of the extension. So either it can be in two extension. So either it will be of an Excel S, or in some cases it will be like SL assets. So in my case the format is SLHS. Okay, so we are going to read this Excel sheet. And how we are going to read this Excel sheet? So in order to read this Excel sheet, so we need to inject the knowledge of few jar. So which is nothing but we need few dependency, and the dependency which we are going to use is called as an Apache Py. Okay, so we need to add the Apache Py dependency, and you all aware like where we need to add the, where we need to get the dependency. So I'm just going to the official web page called as an mavenrepository.com, and here I'm just going to search with the keyword called as an py. Okay, so whenever we search with the keyword called as an py, so the Apache py jar will be written, and here we need to add two jar. So one is like kind of an py jar, and another is like py OOXML. Okay, so let me just open this two jar in a different window. So these are the two jar which we are going to add. So whenever you are going to add this two jar, make sure you are using the same version. So what is the latest PyJar version which is available is like 5.2.5. So I'm just selecting the 5.2.5, and as usual like whenever you do the click operation, it will copy the dependency. So navigate to the pom.xml file and paste the respective dependency inside the dependency session. Okay, so inside the dependency session I am pasting it up. In similar way, like we need to add one more jar called as an py OOXML. So we are selecting the same version, and I'm just selecting the dependency, and I'm navigating to the pom.xml, and I'm placing the respective dependency. So whenever like you are adding something inside the pom.xml, I told multiple times, so like we need to do the maven reload. So whenever we do the maven reload, it will communicate to the public repository, and it will download the required jar file to the local repository, which is nothing but we call it as an .m2 folder. So now if I click on this maven, and if I expand the dependency session, so now it doesn't have the PyJar. But if I try to reload it, so what happened? It will download the necessary jar file and it will place the necessary jar file in the .m2 folder. So it will take some time, or else like we could able to see. So it says resolving dependency. So which is nothing but it is trying to communicate with the public repo, and from the public repo it will download the needed jar file. Now you could see it has added the Apache PyJar. So now our framework have the knowledge of the PyJar, and with the help of the PyJar we are going to read the Excel sheet. Okay, and we are going to follow this flow. So like we are going to initially access the workbook, and inside the workbook we are going to access the specific sheet, and post accessing the specific sheet, like we are going to retrieve the value from the cell with the help of the row and column index. So now we may insert the value in any of the class file. So as of now, like we have created only one class file, but moving forward, like we will be having multiple class file, or else like we are having multiple methods. We can insert the test data in any of the method. So which means like in order to read the Excel, so we should create a reusable file. So whenever something is reusable, it can be accessed or it can be used in various class and various method. So I'm going to convert this Excel reading as a reusable file. So whenever something is reusable, we need to create under the main Java, and I'm expanding the main Java, and already we are having some reusable called as a base code. So now under which I'm going to add a one more reusable class. So let it be of an read Excel. Okay, I'm creating the read Excel, and inside this class I'm going to create one method. Okay, so how we create the method? Like with the help of the keyword public void, and we should give always give the meaningful method name. So let's say get cell value. I'm giving the method name as an get cell value. And whenever you're creating the method at the end, like we need to create use the open and close bracket, and I'm just creating the block for the method, and inside which like we are going to write the coding. So the first step is like we need to read the workbook. So in order to read the workbook, we are having some special class in the Apache Py. So based upon the extension, we need to choose the class. If the extension is like HLS, we should use the class called as an HSF workbook. Okay, to access the workbook. If the extension is like SLHS, so then you should use the class called as an HSF workbook. And in similar way, in order to access the sheet, we are having some class, so which we call it as an HSF sheet. And in similar way, for the other format, we are having HSF sheet. And then post accessing the sheet, like we may need to access the row and method, so we can reuse this methods which is present in the class, and with the help of the method we can insert the row and column value. So now let us try to integrate in our coding. I told like this is a class, so whenever we need to use one class in another class, so we should create an object for the same. And what is the Excel format? So the Excel format is like kind of an Excel assets. If that is the case, so we should use the class called as an XSSF workbook. So I'm going to create the class for the same. I'm just typing XSSF, okay, workbook. So now if you notice, like when I type something, so it is giving me the suggestion. Okay, so it will give me the suggestion, or else like I will retype it XSF. Okay, so workbook. So you could see it is giving me the suggestion. So the reason why the suggestion is enabled in the sense, like we have added the Apache PyJar, and I told like whenever we are using any classes, so everything will be present inside the package. So here we are going to use the built-in package called as an org.apache.py, and from the built-in package we are going to reuse this class called as an HSF workbook. So whenever we use the class from the built-in packages, the import statement will be added at the top. So we can verify the import statement as well, and I'm giving the variable name as an workbook is equal to new of HSF workbook. Okay, and at the top we can verify the import statement. So what is the import statement is present? So the input, this is the package, so which is nothing but this is the built-in packages, so which we have added. So now, like if I place the mouse over this HSF workbook, so this HSF workbook is expecting some input. So like either we need to pass some workbook type, or we need to pass the workbook factory, or else like it says input stream. So we already discussed what is meant by input stream. So input stream in the sense, like while explaining this property file, I have explained to you. So like whenever we are going to read something, so like we should use the file input stream, and only with the help of the file input stream we can read it up. So we either it is of an like kind of an property file or the Excel sheet. So we should use the file input stream, and with the help of the file input stream, so like we need to access the specific workbook. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the file input stream, and file input stream is the class which is provided by the Java. And in order to use like one class in other class, so we should always create an object for the same. So I'm just creating the object for the file input stream, and with the help of the file input stream we can read the Excel, but we need to provide the path of the Excel. And how we will provide the path of the Excel in the sense, with the help of the file class. So like how we provided the path of the property file, in similar way like we need to provide the path of the Excel sheet. So I'm just going to use the file class, and as it is of an class, so we should create an object for the same. So like new of file, and inside which like need to provide the path. So whenever we need to provide the path, so we should always provide the content root path. I told multiple times what is meant by content root. It always starts from the source folder. So like src slash, inside which like we are going to access the main, and inside the main we are going to access the resources. So please don't make any typo error. So if there is any typo error, so then what happen, it won't read the respective file. Okay, so we are accessing the resources, and under the resources we are accessing the data. Okay, let me check the spelling of the resources, resurces. Okay, resources, and inside which I'm accessing the data, and then like we need to provide the sheet name along with the extension. So like I can just click on copy path reference, and I can copy the file name, and I'm just providing the same file name. So whenever you are providing the file name, so make sure you are providing the extensions. Okay, because like in our project, so we may have a multiple data sheet. Okay, so depend upon your use case, so we may have an multiple data sheet, and we should provide the data sheet name along with the extension. And now we are going to pass this in the file input stream, and now we are going to
Uh,
inject this
Abhi,
file
sorry to
input
interrupt
stream.
you. Can we copy complete path directly, like copy path?
So like if it is available, you can copy it up if you just right click on it. So there is an option called as an copy path. So if you click on the copy path, so like for few system, so it will provide the content root path starting from the source folder. If it is available, you can copy from here, or else like you can type manually. Okay, if you need to copy path it,
Okay,
so
that
just
is
right click
available.
on it. So click on the copy path and reference, and inside which like you could get to know the absolute path, but we should not provide the absolute path because absolute path refers to your local. So we should not refer to our local, we should read it from inside the project. So either you should provide the content root path. So content root path always starts from the source folder. Okay, so now after providing the path, we face the exception, right, in the property file. In similar way, if I hover over the mouse, it will ask me to add the exception. I will explain the reason in the upcoming classes why we are adding this exception. So like whenever uh, our program unable to find this path, so then it will throw the exception called as a file not found. So now we are accessing the file and we are injecting this file input stream to the workbook. Okay, so again it will throw the exception, hover over the mouse and just add the exception. So now we are able to access the respective workbook. And how we have access the workbook in the sense with the help of the class called as an accessive workbook, and the inside which like with the help of the file input stream, like we have read the file and we have passed the respective file inside the accessive workbook. So now as per the flow, after accessing the workbook, so we need to access the sheet. Like in order to access the sheet, like we are having some class called as an xsf sheet. So I'm just going to use the same class called as an xsf sheet, and I'm just going to provide the variable name as an sheet. And here we need to provide the sheet name, and where the sheet is present in the sense the sheet is present inside the workbook. So the workbook contain various sheet, so we should read the workbook. So what is the variable name of the workbook? We call it as a workbook. So I can say like workbook dot, and there is a method called as an get sheet, and inside which like we need to pass the sheet name. And this is kind of an parameterized method, so where and it is expecting the string as an input, so we should provide the sheet name in the string. And we know what is the sheet name, so we are going to read the sheet name called as an login. Okay, so now inside this sheet we are going to access some cell value. So like what is the variable name of this xsf sheet? We call it as a sheet. I can say sheet dot, and inside which like we'll be having some inbuilt method called as an get row. So with the help of the get row method, we are going to pass the like row index. Like if I just open this excel sheet, okay, so like we have placed the username in the 0th row, right? So I can pass the row index as an 0. So we have provided the sheet name as a login, and we need to read this username called as a sample, which is present inside the 0th row and 0th column. And we are providing the row index with the help of the get row method, and post that like in order to inject the column value, so we are going to use an another method called as an get cell. So with the help of the get cell, we are going to inject the column value, and post navigating to the respective cell, we need to extract the text which is present inside the cell. And in order to extract the text, so we are going to use the method called as an get string cell value. Okay, so now like what we have done, we have read the workbook, and inside the workbook we have accessed the specific sheet. And inside the specific sheet, like we have accessed the specific cell by providing the row index and the column index, and post that like we are retrieving the value. But if I run this code, right, so every time it will read the value only from the sheet called as an login, and it will retrieve the cell value, which is nothing but it will retrieve only the a1 cell value. But when it comes to an reusability, so the reusability in the sense like the user can reuse this same method in various places, and whenever he is reusing the method, so he may need to refer on the different sheet, or he may need to read the different cell value. And how we can make this method as an reusable in the sense, we can like parameterize this method. So whenever we parameterize the method, I told, so if it is of if you have one parameter, so the user should pass an one argument. If it is of a two parameter, the user should pass an two argument. So here we can get this input from the user, so which means like we can create three parameter. So here we are injecting the string. So I'm just creating first parameter called as an so string sheet name, and I am creating the second parameter where we are going to pass the row index and the column index. I can say like int row index, and I am providing the data type called as an column index. So why I have provided the data type as a integer in the sense, because like the index value is basically the numerical value, and instead of this, like we are going to inject the input which the user has been provided. So whenever the user inject the input, so the variable holds the value, so the corresponding value will be injected here. Okay, so we are going to get the input from the user. So now, like, let me get the pass the row index and the column index over here. So wherever required, we can call this method. So but if we need to call one method in the other classes, etc., so then what we need to do, so we need to create an object, because
Object.
like this is kind of an non-static method. So whenever the method is non-static, so we need to create the object for this class, so that like we can access this particular method. So how we can avoid the uh, object creation, in the sense we can make this method as an static. So whenever we make it as an static, so now we can simply reuse this method by providing the class name dot method name, and here we have used the access modifier as public. So if it is of an public, so it can be reused across any of the package. Okay, so now it will execute this method, it will extract the cell value, and as it is of an cell string value, so I'm just going to store in a data type called as an string. So let it be, I'm giving the variable name as called as an value. So now we need to inject this value inside the send case. So which means like you need to return this value. So there is an one more Java concept involved here, so which we call it as an return type. Okay, let me create one sample program. Okay, so we learned one concept called as an global variable and the local variable. So let's say I'm creating two method. So public void m1, and I'm creating another method called as an public void m2. Okay, so these are the two methods which is available. I'm having some local variable called as an int a is equal to 2. Here I'm having one more local variable called as an so string like d is equal to something xyz. But I need to reuse this local variable in other method. So how we can reuse, in the sense, because I told already, so the life of the local variable lies only inside the method, so we can't access outside the method. So how we can access outside the method, in the sense, by adding the return statement. So which means like if you need to reuse this 2, so you should return the 2 from this method. And how we can return, in the sense, at the end, so we can use the keyword called as an return, and like we need to provide the variable name called as an a. So when I say return of a, so it is going to return the output called as an 2. So whenever I call the method m1, it will give me the output 2. In similar way, like whenever I call this m2 method, so it will return the string value called as an xyz. So how we can achieve, in the sense, so just add the return keyword and provide the variable name. So because like the variable holds the value, at the end add the semicolon. But after adding the return statement, so you could see it is throwing the error. So if I place my mouse over the return statement, it states cannot return a value from the method with void result type. So whenever we use the keyword called as a void, it indicates you are not returning anything. So it is like kind of a non-return type. But here we are going to return something, right? So if you place over the mouse, so there is an option called as an make m1 return int. So if I just click on it, so now the return type will be changed to int. Okay, so whenever you are going to return something from the method, so you should give the return type. So as we are returning the integer value from this method, so the return type is integer. So in this case, we are going to return the string value. If I hover over the mouse and if I just say make m to return, so it will change to string. So when it is of an void, it indicates you are not returning anything. Okay, so based upon our need, so we can return something from the method. So in our case, like we are going to read the Excel and post that like we are retrieving the value and we are storing in the variable called as an value, which means like we need to return this value, so that it technically indicates like whatever the cell value which we have extracted, so we are returning the value and we can reuse the same in the send case. And how we can return in the sense, so we can add the keyword called as an return, and whatever the value you are going to return, you should specify the variable name. So here I can say, so return of value. Okay, so whenever we add the return statement, so we should change the return type. So generally by default, as of now, like we have given the return type as an void. So whenever the return type is void, it technically indicates like you are not returning anything. But here we are going to return the cell value, so which is nothing but we are going to return the string called as an value, and automatically what happened, so the void will be replaced to the string. So now wherever required, if I call this method called as an get cell value, it indicates like it will technically it will execute this piece of line, and at the end we will be getting the output. It will return the respective output, and the respective output will be injected in the send case. So for example, so now like we have automated some basic scenario, right? Like it says like given user enter the username and password. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to read the username and I'm going to read the password from the Excel sheet. So instead of hard coding the data, so we need to call the method, so which is present inside the reusable class. So like what is the class name we have, read Excel, and inside which like we have created the method. So in order to access it up, so as we have use the keyword called as an static, so we can simply use the syntax called as an class name dot method name. So I have already told, right? So if the method isn't static, we don't need to create an object. So only if it is of a non-static, we need to create an object, and whenever we create an object, it will initialize the class variables and class method, and we can reuse those class methods in the other classes. So here, like in order to avoid the object creation part, I have used the keyword called as an static. So I'm going to straight away use it inside the send case called as an read, okay, Excel dot get cell value. But when I try to use this method, and it is kind of an parameterized method, because like we have parameters the method, the user should inject the sheet name, the row index and column index. So I'm just simply reusing the method, and I'm going to pass three argument, so which is nothing but like we are going to pass the sheet name. So the sheet name we call it as an login, and then like we need to pass the row index. So as it is of an index value, numerical value, we can straight away pass it over here. So now I have passed the row index and the column index. And if you face any error in this method, so hover over the method and click on add exception. So now technically what it indicates here in the sense, so whenever this getCell value method is executed, so technically it is going to return something. So which is nothing but, so we are having some return type, and it is going to return the string value, and the string value will be injected inside the send case. In similar way, like if I need to pass the password, so I can reuse the same method which is present inside the class called as an read Excel, and I'm going to use the method called as an get cell value, and inside which like we need to provide the sheet name. So here we are anyhow we are going to refer the same sheet name called as an login, and then like we need to pass the uh, row index and column index. So where the password is present in the sense, so password is present inside the first row and zeroth column. So you should provide it as like first row and the zeroth column. And now let us try to execute and let's see like how it is injecting the value. So before executing, so like you should always close the Excel sheet. So please don't open the Excel sheet. So always try to close the Excel sheet and try running it up. So now I have closed the Excel sheet and I'm going to run the same scenario. So now let's see so whether it is injecting the value from the Excel sheet or not. If I run the same program, so now we didn't hard coded the value. So we are going to read the Excel and how we are reading the Excel in the sense with the help of the class called as and read Excel, and inside which like we have created the reusable method called as an get cell value, and with the help of the method, so we are going to do the respective operation, and post doing the respective operation, so the corresponding cell value will be stored in a string variable called as an value, and we are returning that value, and the returned value will be injected inside the send keys. Okay, so now let's see like how it is injecting the value. So now you could see like so it is not injecting the value, so which yeah, it has injected. So it has injected the value called as in sample, and it has injected the password called as an abc, and how the injection occurs in the sense with the help of the Excel sheet, and how it work in the sense like as I told. So whenever we are executing, initially the hooks call will happen, and post that like it will execute the given statement. So it will identify the locator property and post that like it will execute the method called as an getCellValue. And in order to execute this getCell method, so we are passing three input called as an a login and the row index and the column index. If I do the control click, so it will be navigating to the getCellValue. So here what we are going to do, so we are going to inject the sheet name, we are going to inject the row index, and we are going to inject the column index. And what is the purpose of the sheet name in the sense, like because like initially like we are reading the workbook, so we need to access the workbook, and how we can access the workbook in the sense with the help of the class called as an HSF workbook. So why I have used this class called as an HSF workbook in the sense, because like we should always take care of the extension. So like what is the extension of the Excel sheet? So if you have provided the wrong class name, so for example instead of that HSF workbook, if I have used HSF workbook, then it will throw the error. Okay, so here we are going to read we are going to access the workbook. So I have told multiple times, so like whenever we are going to read something, so we should always use the file input stream. So we have already seen this while reading the property file. So in order to read the property file, so what we have done, so we have used the file input stream, and how we have provided the path of the file in the sense with the help of the file class. So I have used the same logic. So like I have used the file input stream. The purpose of the file input stream is like to read the file, and in case if you need to write the file, so we should use the class called as a file output stream. And in order to read the file, we need to know the location of the file, and how we will get to know the location of the file in the sense with the help of the file class. So in order to provide the location, so in a Java, so we should always use the file class. So in order to use one class in other class, so we should create an object. So I have created an object and I have specified the file path. So and after getting the file path, so we are reading the file and we are injecting the readed file into the specific workbook. So now we can access any of the sheet inside this workbook, and in order to access the sheet, like we are going to use the class called as an HSF sheet. And how we are accessing the sheet in the sense, so inside the workbook we may have an multiple sheet, and we should use the method called as an get sheet. And while this get sheet execute, we are getting the sheet name from the user, so that a user used to inject the sheet name, or else like if you need the detailed flow, So how it is working up, as I told multiple times, so whenever you need to understand the logic, so add a debug points. So like post adding the debug points, so you will get to know so what it is happening at the particular line. Okay, so we are accessing the sheet, and post accessing the sheet, the user is injecting the row value and the column value, and we are returning the string value, and the corresponding string value is returned. So the return string value will be injected inside the send keys. So now let me just try to provide the wrong class name. So instead of like HSF workbook, I'm just going to use the HSF workbook, and then like instead of the HSF sheet, let me try to use the HSF sheet, and let me just do the import statement, and let me just try to run the same program. So the key point here is like, so only based upon the extension of the Excel sheet, so we should pick the correct class. So whenever like you are using the incorrect class, so then what happen, it will throw the exception. So now let's see like what is the exception we are getting up, and you could see there is some slowness in my machine. So maybe what I need to do, so before running each and every script, I need to do the maven clean. So like if you do the maven clean, it will clear the temp files, and the execution will be much faster. Okay, so now the browser is invoking, and it will try to read the Excel sheet. So, but when I try to read the Excel sheet, for sure, like some exception will be faced. So that is the reason it is unable to enter the username and password. And let's see like what is the exception. So if I just look over the exception, it says arg.apache.py.file system error. So we can able to recognize based upon the package name. So whether it is a Selenium issue or a Java issue or a Maven issue or like a kind of an Apache Py issue, it is purely an Apache Py issue. Okay, so if you read this entire exception, it has clearly mentioned like you need to call the different part of Py to process this data. So it is showing the suggestion. So like use the XSF instead of the HSF. Okay, so we should always use the correct extension. So only with the correct, sorry, not a correct extension, the correct class. So we can able to access, we can read the respective Excel sheet. Okay, so please make sure like you are providing the appropriate class or not, or else like even for better understanding what I can do, let me just this time let me change the value in the Excel sheet, and let me just use the debug points, and let's see like how it is executing. So now instead of the sample, let me change the data to the learn more. Okay, so let it be of an learn more, and I'm just saving this particular Excel sheet. So now let me add the debug points. So wherever you feel, so you need what happening in the particular line, so you can add the debug points. And whenever you are adding the debug points, so please make sure you are running the runner with the help of the debugger. Okay, so now I have added the debug points. So which means while executing this particular line, let me just run in the debugger mode, and you get to know so how the execution is occur. So initially what happened, the hooks call will occur. So hooks call in the sense it will execute the at before annotation, and it will do the browser initialization. So whatever the browser we have provided in the property file, so it will read the browser, and it will initialize that particular browser, so which is nothing but it will invoke the either the Chrome or Edge. Okay, the execution has started, and post that like it will start executing the test step. So test step in the sense it will execute the given statement. So while executing the given statement, so it will try to execute the line called as an given. It will try to execute the line called as an 126 driver dot find element. So while executing this line, as we have used this method called as a get cell value, so now what happened? It will execute the get cell value. But we have added the debug points, right? So whenever we add the debug points, so like now what happened? So the execution will be under our control, and we could see like it is a fun parameterized method. It will inject the sheet name, and like where the sheet name is provided in the sense that whatever the user input we have provided, so it will refer the sheet name, so which is nothing but we have provided the sheet name as a login. It will inject the sheet name, and post injecting the sheet name, so it will inject the row index and column index. So whatever the user has provided, it will inject the respective row and column index, and it will retrieve the cell value, and it will return the string value, and it will store in a variable called as a value. And if I resume the program, so the corresponding value will be injected here. You could see the learn more is injected here, and while executing the next line, okay, so again what happened, it will execute the line number 127, but even in this 127 we are going to like read this method called as an get cell value, which is nothing but we are going to execute the method called as an get cell value. So as it is of an static method, so we are simply executing the particular method, and again the debugger mode will pass the execution, and this time again the sheet name will pass, and post that like we are going to pass the respective like row index and column index, so whatever the user has provided. So in that particular line we have provided the row index as 1 and the column index as 0, and it will read the value from the spreadsheet, which is nothing but from the sheet, and it will store the corresponding output in the variable called as a value. And whatever the value is written from this method, it will inject it inside the send keys. If I resume the program, so it will inject the password as an ABC. It has injected the username called as an learn more and password called as an ABC, and how the injection occurs in the sense, so it has read the Excel sheet, and with the help of the Excel sheet it has retrieved the data, and it has injected the same. And then like after execution, so by default as I told, so like the report will be generated. If I just open the report, so we may have the screenshot. So like we can just cross check always, so whether the screenshot is amounted in the cucumber report.html. So if I just expand it up, so this is the screenshot which is captured. So we could see it has entered the respective test data called as an learn more and the password called as an ABC. So the corresponding screenshot will be captured, and it will be amended under the each and every statement. Okay, so this is how like we will be reading the data from the Excel. So now the questions are welcome.